Isolation, anger, resentment, humiliation are just a few things that we as addicts feel. I was born in Ringgold, Georgia in 1970, and I'm adopted. Um, Growing up, I can't say that I had a bad childhood because I didn't. I was in a very loving family, very caring family. You got up to go to the bathroom and they were trying to give you hugs. But living at home was a whole nother story. I lived with a real life boogeyman. For 7 years, he physically beat my mother, and I was made to watch. After 7 years, the final straw was when he picked up a loaded shotgun and put it to my head and told my mom that if she didn't open the door, he was going to kill me. So finally that nightmare was over, or so I thought. From the ages of 9 to 12, I was raped and molested by the preacher of the church that we attended, and that's probably why I have an issue coming to church nowadays. I started drinking alcohol when I was 7, started smoking weed when I was in 5th grade, started getting in a lot of trouble, and I just didn't think that my life would end up where it ended up at. 1985 on April 12th was probably the defining moment that changed everything for me. My grandfather that I was very close to killed himself. And it was then that, I had a deep, darker secret than smoking crack at the age of 15. I was a whole lesbian, and boy, back then, that was a taboo subject. You just didn't talk about that. And if my parents would have known then, it would have been a wrap then. So I had this pretend boyfriend, Brian. And I had a girlfriend, she was my best friend, and I'll talk about her in a minute, but at the age of 15, I knew he sold drugs, but I didn't know that he did them. So we would go to parties, and he would always duck off into this back room or whatever, and I'd open the door and sitting there smoking something, and I was like, what are you doing? Oh no, get out of here. No, you're gonna let me try that. If you don't, somebody will. So he gave in, and I started smoking crack at the age of 15. Did it every day for the next 2 years. About a year after I started seeing Brian, he was like very persistent about, just try it. No, I don't want to try it. I'm good. Well, I finally gave in. Twice within the same week, I ended up pregnant. Couldn't tell my mom. Learn something new every day, don't you? Couldn't tell my mom. And, my mom's this itty bitty lady, and I'm to this day scared to death of her. But I respect her, and I love her more than anything in this world. My girlfriend at the time, she decided she wanted to start smoking. So now I've got her addicted to crack, I'm addicted to crack, we're all addicted to crack. And in May of 1987, I was 6 months pregnant. School was about to be out, she didn't go to school, so I went to her house. And I watched her blow her whole head off with a 9mm. So I've been through some traumatic things in life, I ended up running away because it was about time to have my daughter. I ran away to California, had her, put her up for adoption because I was a pill-popping alcoholic crackhead that couldn't take care of myself. Came back to Indiana and did my first stint in DOC at Indiana Girls School. So technically my DOC number should have been 87, not 89. 1989, I went to Marion County Jail, and if any of you have ever heard of Marion County Jail, you know that is not the place to be, especially a little 18-year-old white girl. No, not the place to be. But I saw firsthand what harder drugs could do to you, heroin, which was a big thing with them back then. I went to prison for the very first time at the age of 19. Started out with petty theft. We graduated to forgery. We graduated to burglary, and ultimately 3 2.5 years ago, we got to a robbery charge, which we'll get to that in a minute too. I came home, and between the ages of 19 and 22, I had been in prison for 4 times. From 94 to 2001, drifted here and there, did this, did that, bounced from this place to that place, this job to that job. Had periods of sobriety. You know, I stopped using the harder drugs, but I started drinking profusely, and it was all bad. So I ended up going back to prison in 2001, got out on my 35th birthday in 2005. I had to go back and count real quick. In 2005, stayed out until 2012, went back for probation violation and a theft charge because I robbed the liquor store that I worked at to go bond my ex-girlfriend out of jail. That relationship lasted for about 8 years. It was very toxic, it was very abusive, and it was absolutely horrible. Sitting in the parking lot of Walmart in West Lafayette with a 13-gram chunk of meth, I decided I was just gonna finally leave her. 2000, we'll go back real quick, 2016, I made the biggest mistake of my life. When I got out of jail, I decided I was gonna learn how to shoot myself with a needle. Thus began the love affair with not only meth, but with that being a needle. And I don't recommend drugs to anybody, but needles are just a not okay thing. You know, I spent 30 years in and out of trouble, away from my family, away from my parents. In 2012, my dad was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. The whole time I was in jail or in prison, I'm thinking, oh, he's gonna die before I get home. I get home and what do? I'm taken off again, back in the same abusive, toxic relationship that I fought so hard to get away from. So, you know, we fast forward to, matter of fact, 3 years ago today, I was staying at my best friend's house, who is like my sister. So if you ever hear me talk about my sister, her name's Carrie. I was doing good, had a job I loved, was sober, while I left one toxic relationship for another one. Got with my ex-wife, and was all bad. I took my sister's VCR and her PlayStation to the pawn shop. They came home a day early, and after being gone on a weekend binge, I was knocked out in the bed when she came in. Oh, are you kidding me? Needles in her house, bubbles in her house, baggies in her house. So they called the police on me. So 3 years ago today, I was sitting in Tippecanoe County Jail. Possession of a syringe, possession of paraphernalia, and 2 theft charges. I got bonded out. I went to my ex-wife's in Huntington, and that, I thought I had hit a low in 2017 when I tried to get clean, and I did it cold turkey and cleaned out my car and found over 100 needles, back caps, baggies, you name it, it was all in my car. So 3 months, and being adopted, I found my biological family in October of 2018. I ended up in Virginia with my biological dad for 5 days. Couldn't take it. I wanted to come back to Indiana, so what did I do? I stole a car. I've never stolen a car in my life. Can you picture me in a little Mazda Miata convertible with no radio driving all night? So yeah, came back. And the whole time, you know, I'm thinking, man, what am I doing? I've been homeless, but I've never had to sleep on the street. Being with her, I did. September 7th of 2019, I took a whole box of sleeping pills and tried to kill myself. Ended up in the woods for 3.5 hours and have no idea what was real and what was fake. All I know is I was on the ground looking at a rock that was transparent that had a heart and I could see it beating. I don't know if I ran through the woods for 3.5 hours. I don't know. September 20th was the final breaking point for me. I had a warrant. No relationship with my parents. My dad was dying, and my mom had fell and broke her hip, and I wasn't there. I was selfish. But I didn't know how to get out of the rabbit hole that I had dug myself into. So I was walking back to my little home in the little storage unit thing across from the apartment that my ex-wife lived in, and walked past the gas station. Phone was broke, phone bill was due, mom wouldn't give me any money. What do? I'm tired. So, never before have I ever robbed anybody, but I was probably the nicest robber in the world. No disguise, you know me, I wear hats and, excuse me, sweetie, I need all the money in the register. Yeah, right. No, I'm being dead serious. I really don't want to do this, but I need all the money in the register. So she keeps laughing at me until I finally, I didn't want my fingerprints on anything, so I took my shirt and slid a lighter across there and said, bring that up, act like I paid for it, and give me the money. She finally gave me the money, and I ran out the door, and as I was running out the door, some guy came in, and I could hear in the background, she robbed me. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, what do I do? So being homeless, I carried a backpack and I had extra clothes. So I run through the woods, I ditched the hat in the creek, the sunglasses in the creek. I changed clothes. Dropping money everywhere, $72. $72 that I didn't even get to keep. They took all my fishing stuff, they took my knives, they took everything. And I'm sitting in jail, thinking I'm on an episode of First 48. Okay, I got you. And I don't remember much about the first week or so of being in jail, but I do know that the women in Grant County at that point in time became my family. They were there for me when nobody else was. They had no idea who I was. I was a stranger to them. But they took me under their wing. They were there, period. And so I got sentenced, and within 30 years, I've been to prison 7 times. And in those 7 times, the last couple was, my dad's gonna die, I'm not gonna make it home, For 9 years, my mother was his primary caregiver, and it's taken its toll on her. Tomorrow's another major milestone for me because, as my friend Carrie right there knows, a year ago tomorrow, I was released from DOC. And I am blessed to say that it's been a rough year, but I'm blessed to say that I can stand here today and tell you that I'm proud of who I've become. I'm definitely not the same person Carrie met a year and a half ago. Since then, my dad passed away June 19th, and everybody's biggest thing from when they got a hold of me, are you still sober? And the crazy thing is, my mom knew. I was actually on my way to an NA meeting at the Surf Center in Lafayette that morning. It was on a Saturday. And I remember she called, and I was coming down Ferry Street, right by those new apartments. She said, you need to get home. The hospital just called. Your dad's not doing good. And I didn't care. Police, whatever, I did a U-turn right in the middle of the road, trying to do 100, trying to get home. Little did I know, my dad had already passed away. He passed away at 9:05. We get to the hospital, and we get off the elevator, and we're about 4 or 5 rooms down from his, and my mom stops. Jennifer, he's gone. What are you talking about? He passed away already. He's gone. Quit playing. I wouldn't play with you about something like that. And I let out, I don't know what kind of noise or scream in that hospital. I didn't want to believe it. But I was fortunate that my dad held on long enough for me to spend 30 days with him. You know, I would get him up and I'd be like, come on, Dad, let's dance. Gotta get you to the bathroom. You know, I'd play peekaboo with him. I'd put his little blanket on him and I'd be like, peekaboo. He'd be like, look at me, look at me. You know, so I have memories from when I was younger before I started really getting in trouble. But those last 30 days mean the world to me. He always wore a watch. And obviously he wore his wedding ring. And I asked my mom, I said, Mom, can I have Dad's watch? She said, I want you to have his wedding ring. I had already went through a drawer and I found this little box, this little jewelry box, and it had 2 more rings in it. And the one I knew that my dad wore a lot when they would go out, and they're very special to me. And I wear them when I go to meetings or I go somewhere, you know, and I want my dad with me. My mom's not doing good, but I'm there for her now. She tries to bring up things that I've done in the past, but like I told her, I don't live in the past. I don't live in yesterday. I don't live in like the last minute. I do good to live right now. But I have to set boundaries. While I was at IWP this last time, I was in a program called Recovery While Incarcerated. I wasn't too keen on going at first. Step 4 is what saved my life, and that is why I can stand here today and tell you my story. You know, I gave my testimony at RWI, and one of the analogies that I used is life is like a car battery. You have the positive, which is the good. You have the negative, which is the bad. And a car doesn't run on just a positive or a negative. You have to have both of them. And that's how it is in life. You have to have both. If it wouldn't have been for everything that I've gone through, I wouldn't be the person that I am today. And I don't compete against anybody but myself. I don't owe my sobriety or my recovery to anybody but me. You know, I've had to set boundaries with my mother, and she doesn't understand that. But she has to set her boundaries with me too. We have our days, you know, and boy, when they're bad, but she's in the onset of dementia, so I have to keep that in mind. I stay sober for a lot of reasons. My sister, thank God, she forgave me, and we're closer now than we've ever been, and I absolutely adore her. I have an amazing girlfriend that I am so proud of her because she's been sober almost 4 years. She takes care of, I claim her as my daughter, but a disabled daughter, and she's absolutely amazing. The biggest relationship that I've been able to repair is with my mother. If you would have told me 3 years ago that I would be the power of attorney living at her house, driving her car, I would have told you, yeah, okay, you're funny. But that's where we are today. I'm all my mom has. You know, in October, I lost 2. I claimed them as my niece and my nephew. They were brother and sister. 19-year-old Dawson decided one morning he was going to get up and run his car into a tree doing 95 miles an hour and kill himself. 3 days later, his sister was dead from an overdose. Worst funeral I've ever been to in my life was a double funeral for a 19-year-old kid and a 26-year-old girl that had a little 3-year-old daughter. Horrifying. Never want to do that again. I am here to tell you that we do recover. And one of my all-time favorite sayings out of any movie I've ever watched is that $1 Million Baby. When she's trying to get him to train her, and he looks at her and says, it won't be easy. And she turns around and she looks at him and says, I don't need easy. I just need possible. And that's how I look at my recovery. I don't want it to be easy. I don't need it to be easy. I just need it to be possible. And because of that, I am here to tell you that my story doesn't end with my addiction, but it begins with my recovery. My name is Jennifer, and I am a grateful addict in recovery today.
What are you doing?
No, turn that off.
Oh.